Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Grab Your Stuff Podcast. First of all, I have to say, when I tell you, y'all have floored me at the support. Y'all have been blowing up my DMs. Y'all been posting about the show. You've been pulling out your little nuggets. I love to see it. I'm so grateful. Thank you guys for supporting this podcast. And if you really want to support this podcast, you can take it another step by becoming a patron on Authentically Wed's Patreon account, where you'll have exclusive community. You'll have exclusive content, early releases. I drop the episodes the Sunday before, all in video. So you get to see this face. For those of y'all who are listening on podcast, God bless you, but you don't get the glory of seeing my gorgeous face. That's the part. You know what I'm saying? So for those of you guys, and I mean, it is also on YouTube, so you can listen on the podcast and then also go on YouTube later. But if you really want to support what we're doing, it's not free. It's not cheap. So we'd appreciate it. But thank y'all for supporting in the ways that you have. Today is a really dope episode. I'm actually pretty excited about it. We have a special guest in the studio. And before I introduce him, I just want to tell you guys, I want to give a little bit of a warning that this episode might ruffle some feathers, but it is all good information that I believe is going to come out of this. But I say that because me and you have really candid and very long conversations about our lives, relationships, etc. And sometimes like we can like be a little it can be a little, you know, but it's rough. It's all love though. It's all love. And I think that we're always better for it. So I wanted to bring our conversations to you guys and hope that it helps you to think a little bit differently, a little bit more critically about relationships, singleness, etc. So my special guest today is my brother, my friend, LeVar Norsworthy. AKA Gemini. He also goes by Gemini. He is a marketing expert, genius. Like, I would start name dropping, but I'm not gonna do that. Like, he's the type of person that if you don't have him on your team, you're low key like you failing low key. But we're gonna pray for you anyway.
I feel the love in the room.
It's there. You're amazing. And not only that, he's a seasoned entrepreneur. He is super dope, man of God, and he is a single Christian brother. Look at that. It's real empty over there. Not even a shadow, because, you know, sometimes men will just take it off and it's like the shadow of where the thing once was. But he's single.
Legit.
How single are you?
Oh, man. Real single.
So before we get more into the episode, we have our first segment, which is called Let Me Put You On. Side note, this is a sidebar, and I might just keep this in for the Patreon people, but I low-key want, like, a theme song, and I want a Let Me Put You On, like, what's the thing called? Like a theme song, like a the Let Me Put You On jingle, like let me put you on, 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 and then we just go into
See what it is. See, that was a low key ask, right? And she knows that if she asks for it, she can get what she asked for. See, you're the actual guru of marketing.
Am I?
You're the chief communicator. Yeah.
Oh, come on, somebody. So, you know, if anybody out there or in this room would like to create those things for the podcast, I'd really be appreciative. I think it'd be dope. But anyways, our first segment is called Let Me Put You On. And this is a segment where I bring up something that I like, something that's tickling my fancy that I think is dope that you guys should try or experience, you know, so you can expand your palette, expand your world. Today, our Let Me Put You On is going to be led by our special guest, LeVar.
Listen.
So, what you want to put the people on to today?
I'm humbled by the opportunity. Well, when I think about what we need today, during and post-pandemic, where there's a lot of opportunities for there to be trash content online and things you can kind of fill your head with a lot of stuff that doesn't really take you anywhere. I think Russell Brand has a podcast. Russell Brand, he's an actor, the British guy. You know what I mean?
He used to date Katy Perry.
He did.
I remember that. They were a very interesting couple.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I think. It was a movie he was in or something like that. I don't remember.
I know that movie, but I haven't seen it.
But anyway, so he's a guy. I never really caught on to his personality as an actor, as an actor. But he's like low-key genius. So he's like super woke. He's talking about everything socio-political. He does talk about some religious things as well as it relates to the culture. He talks about basically a lot of the conspiracy theorists that we have out there who are kind of low-key looking at everything that's happening in the government and in the world. He addresses it head on. So I think he's really dope.
That's cool. I find that hard to believe though, because he is super weird. Like he be doing some weird stuff. Like he be doing some dumb stuff.
But don't you think most genius people do weird and dumb stuff?
I don't do weird and dumb stuff.
Don't you think most people do weird and dumb things? Say what I said.
Thank you for supporting Grab Your Stuff podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by... Hey y'all, it's your girl Veronique Esther, founder and creator of Authentically Wed, a platform dedicated to empowering people to be their healthiest and most authentic selves in their intimate relationships from a biblical perspective. One thing that my community specializes in is having the conversations that help people build better relationships. But what I found is that while people are talking to those that they're in relationships with, they're not having the right conversations. I think I have the solution to that. The Close Closer Conversation Card Starter Pack. In this, you'll find 2 decks and 30 questions to help you level up your conversations, whether family time, girls' night, or date night. You'll have access to carefully curated questions that help you not just have the conversation that's on the card, but every conversation attached to it. So what are you waiting for? Level up your conversations and your relationships today by going to www.authenticallywed.com/getclose. All right, so today's episode, the topic is, are there any good women left? Bum, bum, bum. So everybody already is pissed now. There are now, but before you exit out the app, before you close down YouTube, before you exit out of Patreon, listen to what we have to say. And how this goes, okay? So I really hate asking this question, but for the purposes of this episode, I have to ask it. Okay. And that question is, why are you single, LeVar?
Oh.
Why are you single?
So they don't already close the door? I can't leave? I can't get out?
No.
All right. And I, you know, as much as you hate asking it, I hate answering it because it can be tough. But the long short of it is, I think that when people are talking about getting into a relationship with one another, there's a certain level of, there's some standards that you put down that you're willing to walk with and willing to, you know, pursue and build things in. And I haven't found that.
Wait. You're saying men have standard, you have a standard, and then...
You doggone right. Yeah. I have a standard, and, you know, there are things that, if I'm pursuing a wife, not like a girlfriend, not a toy, not a fling, if I'm pursuing a partner, there's a standard for that, because you can't just walk with anybody.
How can two
walk together
lest they agree?
And we got to agree on them standards.
I know that's right. But can I ask, like, give me 2 of your standards? I can't ask that?
Okay, we'll have an overarching. Okay, so 50,000 foot view, I look for a virtuous woman. So that's extremely important to me. And I look for humility, because pride is one of the biggest enemies to listening and proper communication. I think that no relationship lasts without having the lines of communication. So for me, I'm really sensitive on those 2 things. Just I want to be able to connect and I want to be able to communicate.
That's dope. Yeah. As a high level view, I think those are really important. Those are really good. I don't often hear that, by the way. When I talk to people about what they want in relationships, I don't often hear, I want pride to be, you know, I want to say, like, it's hard sometimes to say, like, I want pride totally gone, right? Like, we all wrestle with some level of pride, but it needs to be something that you're managing and really looking at. And, you know, I want to make sure that there's virtue in that woman, right? Like, people say it, and I think I heard that growing up, youth group and stuff, I want a virtuous woman, but people didn't really know what that meant, right? But the fact that you have a grip on that and you know what to look for is dope. Yeah.
I think, you know, my thing is, pride is in us all, but it can't be God. Like, for instance, your perspective, how you feel in a moment, if you're feeling some kind of way, you know, defaulting to what you think and how you prescribe, you know, what you prescribe toward that situation, that can't be Lord. You know, that can't be the top, because at some point in time, you can create damage to the other person justifiably within your own mind.
Right.
And that's not a game that both people can play by the rules. So I'm against it.
I agree. Yeah. I'm with you. So now that we've talked about standards, what exactly are you looking for as a single Christian man? The people need to know. Everybody take out, not everybody, the ladies that are watching who've been wondering, take out your pen, your papers, take out your notepads. What are you looking for as a single Christian man?
So single Christian man, I want to flip that. Let's say as a single man who's a Christian. So I'm looking for a woman that I have a desire toward. Number one, whether it's not only in how she looks, but it's also how she carries herself. So I wanna have a deep attraction for the woman that I desire to be with. And then I'm looking for a woman who has humility. She's not her own God. It's like, it's not her way is always right. How she feels, her feelings are always right. But a woman who has the ability to take into consideration the other person. I'm looking for a communicator. Not only somebody who knows how to communicate, but also how to listen. That's huge. You know what I mean? Because I've run into a lot of, which brings me to another one, intelligent women. Because I really appreciate intelligent women. I like having great conversations and breaking down things from A to Z. But a lot of times when you have that, it's almost like a lot of times I've run into many women, not all, but who are stronger, message senders than they are receivers. And that doesn't really provide an opportunity for you to connect, right? And so I'm looking for that. I'm also looking for a woman who is grounded in God, has her own relationship with God. She doesn't have to be a theologian. She doesn't have to be, per se a known evangelist, but she has to be solid in what she believes, because something has to anchor, how she conducts herself within a relationship. Just same way as me. And I think lastly, just, someone I can really enjoy, someone who, I think we're in a culture where ambition is huge. I think that's great. But at the end of the day, if you take away all the things, all you have is people. So though I can appreciate an ambitious woman, I want a woman who has the bigger picture of, our role together in a relationship, outside of that relationship, in the midst of ambition and chasing the bag and building a career and building a brand and all of that stuff.
So somebody who is, like you said, they have these desires and things, but they're not lost in it.
They're not lost in it. It cannot be the most important thing, because, growing up in a pre-recession into the recession, my generation, we had to change careers like 4 or 5 times. So that stuff is subject to change. But my thing is, you have people. People, you have to value that over the season of life that you're in.
Facts. So we talked a lot about what you're looking for specifically, but in this conversation, you're kind of going to be the spokesperson for the men delegation, for the Black Christian male delegation. Okay. Are you comfortable with that? Do you accept that responsibility?
Am I comfortable? No. Do I accept it? Yes.
Okay. That's all we need. Okay. We don't need your agreement. No, I'm just kidding. And obviously you don't speak for all men, right? But you know a lot of really decent men, right? You're in these circles. You guys have these conversations. And so I want to know, what is the biggest barrier for men within the dating pool that isn't appropriately addressed when conversations come about with other singles? So what are those things that we all have kind of heard, right? We talk a lot about relationships. And to be honest, to toot my own horn, I'd like to say that in a lot of ways, my platform has been a forerunner in, having these sorts of conversations, because a lot of them weren't being had 3-4 years ago.
Beautiful.
I say that to say, no pride though, no pride, just, reality. But with that being said, we've talked about this on so many platforms. We have talked about it, but what are those things that we're talking about it, but we're not addressing it as it pertains to singledom?
I think we're not. I think you said, what is the barrier? What is one of the
barriers? One of the biggest
for men?
barriers, for men.
Just a one-sided narrative. I think that's the biggest barrier. I think it's very hard for men to be understood, and it's very hard for men to communicate when we are in a culture that is heavily dominated by a feminine articulated narrative.
Can I jump in right here?
Go, listen, if you want to get dirty with it, let's get dirty with it.
Because we have this conversation. And to an extent, I can agree with you. But I also know that what you're saying is this is a female dominated, pretty much. Say I don't want to change your words. You said in a society that's what?
I'll change one word, more of a female friendly and curated narrative. Yeah.
So we would say, as a sociologist, as an anthropologist as well, and as somebody who has engages and speaks to women consistently, what we know historically and what we know from lived experience is that men have the upper hand. Men are the more favored, right? Even if you're black or white, when it comes to, I was actually just reading, y'all pray for me. I'm going through a career change. I haven't talked to you about that. We got to catch up.
We got to talk about that.
I'm going through a career change, and I've been doing a lot of research in this new field. And one of the things that they talked about was how within the workplace, as it pertains to workplace like microaggressions and comfortability, etc., black women always fare the worst when it comes to these types of things. And then after that is usually, depending on what it is, other women of color or black men, and then, white women, white men. And so when you say that, it sounds like a stark contrast to what we know historically, is that men are actually the favored party. What you all say goes. How you feel about a situation determines the temperature of the dating market and of the dating pool, or even what our options are as it pertains to like availability and marriage and who we can actually date. You guys are the gatekeepers. And so to say that, it's a female friendly environment seems a bit counter reality in a way.
counter lying, right? Sounds like lying. Well, let's do this. Let's follow the money. Right. So who are the largest spenders in disposable products?
This is where the marketing expert comes out, by the way. Take notes.
Women. Mm-hmm. What about luxury items, which are at the higher tier of consumerism? Who do you think spends the most money there?
Rappers.
Women. Oh, that would have been great though. That would have been great. So if we're following the money, and if we're seeing the result of consumerism, and we're seeing the groups that it is resulting with, something had to precede that, which is marketing. So now we're talking about communication. So who's being targeted according to following the money?
Women.
Women, absolutely. Industries are targeting women, and not just women, but black women. Because you spend money. So these narratives are being shaped to appeal to certain types of people, certain markets. What narratives?
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so lifestyle narratives, right? So, for instance, there's, if you guys YouTube, where Cosmo had I think it was an editor and maybe a couple of writers that have come forth and probably in the last couple of years, and they talked about the feminist agenda and basically how they were purposely creating messages targeting women to pursue like that independent lifestyle, things that were, driven as it relates to consumerism, so on and so forth, and not needing a man, right? And so what happens is you're having these people that are coming out and saying, man, we didn't realize that we were, catapulting people into a culture that we're now seeing the result of, where it's almost like you're having these conversations where it's like, he don't make enough money. Not is he a good person, not do we match, not do we agree, not do we have like values, but he doesn't make any money. He doesn't make enough money. He doesn't have the lifestyle that I want. I should have this. Or the articles where it's like, a real man would do XYZ. I challenge you to any article that says a real man would do, a real man should do. You'll know if he loves you, if he does. If you look at the writer, I would challenge you, and I would say probably 90% of the time, even in my own, just perusing, 90% of the time, the writer is a woman. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying who's in control and who's not in control. I'm saying the money is being spent more so on tailoring narratives for women because they have the active dollar.
Now, it's interesting. I didn't want to fully jump into the whole money conversation quite yet. However, we're here now, right?
We're here now.
Now, when it comes to, this idea that and in a lot of ways, society has perpetuated, right? Like our media has taught us to believe what it is or has taught us what we should believe pertaining to the value of a man's earning potential, right? Or even their earning, like the current state of what they earn, right? Like at one point it was, look at that man's potential. Now it's don't look at this man's potential. So obviously we know that as culture shifts and media shifts, our beliefs and our ideas and what we think is right, what we think is wrong, what we should do, it shifts as well. But the idea that men are providers and should be able to take care of a household is not specific to our time. It's not specific to our culture. You see it in other cultures. For instance, for cultures that have dowries, right? Where
absolutely.
Now, of course, there are some that do it the opposite way, where the bride's family has to pay, but many often do it to where the husband's family has to pay because they are losing that child, that daughter, and it's a safeguard against if something were to happen to him, whether death or divorce, that person would always be taken care of. So this idea that men should come prepared and able to build a life that is suitable, right? Not just for us to have the bare minimum, but that is suitable, actually going above and beyond to be able to secure a future incident, whether it occurs or not. Like, that's not specific to our culture and our time.
Absolutely.
So,
but see, what you're talking about, it was the precedence for survival and for the perpetuation of the family. It wasn't based in excess and vanity. So you're talking about the prerequisite being a certain dollar amount because of the lifestyle in vanity that or the ambitious lifestyle that is sought after. It's not per, I see myself marrying this person. It's not per, perpetuating the survival and the legacy of this family. It has nothing to do with
I want to
that.
be comfortable.
It's
I want to
deserve.
look like this. Ooh.
It's I deserve.
And what is I deserve rooted in?
Pride.
Ooh.
Entitlement. Pride.
Ooh. So women are entitled and prideful?
You said it, I didn't.
Okay. Now, before y'all throw stones at my brother, I have to be honest about the fact while I don't think that is overtly and grossly, nope. While I don't think,
come on, defend.
that, I know that within my circles, like, I feel like I know reasonable women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And for the places that they're not reasonable, we challenge each other.
Yeah.
But I think this is what I really think.
Okay.
Is that, especially now, social media, regular media, right? Like, it is telling us and pumping the air with these things, and we're breathing it all in. But when it comes time to actually put pen to paper and live that thing out, many women back down. Like, a lot of and I'm not saying that women don't have standards. I'm not saying that you're not upholding your standards. But what I am saying is, I think that when it really comes down to it, the same women that are like, and you better not let that man, or he better come with 6 figures, will take a not 6 figures man when they realize, like, you know what, they start making these exceptions. Some people make exceptions all the way down to, like, you're saying 6 figure this, 6 figure that, but you married a bonehead. Like, you married somebody that really could do nothing for you. So there's that end of it. But I also see women who are like, they're just more reasonable and they're willing to build. Do you not think that that's true? Do you think that what's being pumped and argued, even in comment sections, like, that's really what women are doing?
Well, I can't really speak for the experiences that people are having at large, right? Because I only know a certain sector or segment of groups of people, or whatever the case is. But I will say, we can just look at numbers. We can look at the marriage rate. We can look at the divorce rate. We can look at who is leading the divorce rate as it relates to initiating the divorce. And I think we have to look at those types of things to kind of determine where our values are, because we can say what we want with our mouths. But let me just circle you back around. The reason why we brought all this up was to say this is one of the major barriers, because what happens is, if you have two people who are expected to communicate with one another, you have two people where there's supposed to be levels of compassion and consideration for the value that they're presenting in a conversation. If the narrative is against the criticism that a man would have, he really does not have
equal footing in the conversation.
He does not have equal footing in the conversation. And it's very difficult if you're coming to the table and you're already symbolically like the enemy. It's very difficult because the culture is having a conversation all of the time. When I get there, it is just an extended conversation for you, even though I just got there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, though, that while I that's a good point, and I agree with you that there can be a disadvantage, especially today. I think it is in response to disadvantages from the past. However, white people are having the same, and I know this isn't like a race-centered podcast, but I'm a black woman. I interact with black people all the time, and so this space is always going to be open for black folks. But I think that black people and white people, we're all pretty much under the same media. It's just like filtered depending on, on the audience. We're all getting the same messaging for the most part. However, white women are not being disadvantaged by it. We are, though. Does that make sense?
Because we're not all facing the same social issues. So my thing is, a message will come alive more when it is presented to a group of people who feel like they need it the most. So like, for instance, if you have a fight the power message to a group of people who are not oppressed, they could be like, yeah, fight the power, big picture, fight the power of depression at work or whatever the case is. But then you have another group of people who are talking about socioeconomic oppression. So now it catches fire there more, because there's more brokenness in that message speaks to there. So I think that historically we have probably a lot more brokenness in some areas than other cultures. So now when messages are being filtered to different groups of people, you're going to see the response be different. Just like I could send a marketing campaign for Rolls-Royce to people who make over $200,000 a year. They're going to respond differently than the people who make $20,000 a year. Right. Same message, it's different ground.
Right. Yeah. Right. And there's more things that message will possibly, hit on in one group versus another. So that's a really good point. But then that leads me to think like, not to be a conspiracy theorist, which I low-key feel like reading off topic, but like this idea that like it is for the destruction of black households, like because that message is not going to affect the majority or the global minority, but it will affect black folks, right, differently. And so we can put it out, everybody can hear it, it won't bother them too much, but it'll destroy them. And now we're focused on infighting, and now we have these ridiculous divorce rates. And I mean, by the way, white people have pretty high divorce rates too. Like,
I think the conspiracy is it's debatable, right? I won't jump in that, but here's what I will talk about. We can't talk about the theory, but we can talk about money. Okay. Regardless of how you look at it, the separation in this particular context, it makes more money. Because typically if the man is trying to go after, like, let's just take it back 60 years. The man is going after the home, he goes after the family car, he goes after the major items, right? You don't have a dual expenditure, right? But if you have a woman who's saying, well, I want $1 million house, and a man is like, I got to have $1 million house so the woman with $1 million house will accept me and not clown me, and even if she gets with me, she won't emasculate me because she has more than me. Now you have two sets of people going after the same it sells. It just does.
You make more money that way.
You make more money.
Now I feel like we got to go into that conversation now.
Go for it.
Because this idea, you remember our McDonald's conversation?
Watch yourself.
So LeVar and I were having a conversation, I think it was sometime last year. And I mean, I fought you tooth and nail on this conversation. I might do the same thing today. But you talked about how a woman, like in this day and age, like a woman like myself would reject a man who worked at McDonald's and was like a pillar of his community. Do you remember the context?
Oh, I can lay it out.
Lay it out for our people.
It was yesterday. What I said to our illustrious host was, I said, well, let me ask you this. Riddle me this. If you met a guy, he's a good-looking guy, he works at McDonald's. Let's just say that he's a greeter. And maybe like he does like maintenance and fries, right? He says he has this role because he enjoys being able to connect with people. So every morning, there's a rush at McDonald's. He found his niche and his place in being able to connect with his local community. He was a pillar in his community because everybody knew him. He had a positive name. He was active outside of McDonald's, just in his community. He had a healthy savings account. He owned his own home. And he has the ability to be a good steward over his resources. I said, would you get with him? And the answer was, no.
Did I say no?
No. And I shared with her, I said, it's funny because a lot of corporate women that I've known who've been extremely successful, I've posed to, I posed the same question to them just for my own, insight, and just wanted to, kind of roll it around and see what they thought. They all said no. But then some of them would say, well, does he want to own it? Well, maybe if he plans to own several, so they had an issue with his ambition, right? With his ambition. But my thing is, I was like, no, but what if he's happy there? He doesn't need you to change him. He doesn't need you to reset his path. He said he's happy there. But what it takes for him to be a comparable mate for you, he has all those characteristics. He has all those qualities. And then I've even had one professional woman say, I'm sorry, I just can't. I can't feel comfortable telling my friends that my man, that bae, works for McDonald's. That was the issue. So my thing is, what are we really looking at? If you start to break it down like that, you start to really find out where our issue actually is.
Right. We're trying to create an image, right? Especially now in our Instagrammable age. We're all trying to create a life that is Instagram worthy, which even saying those words coming out of my mouth, like, that is so contrast to our life as believers, right? Like, who exactly should we be glorifying? Right, our life should be a representation of Christ in the earth. Like, it should bring glory to His name, but it should be, if we're talking about worthiness, then we should be seeking His worth, like what He says is worthy, right? But instead, we're looking at what makes us more, what's better content, what looks better, what makes us.
But since I was put on the hot seat, I just want to put you on the hot seat. Would you get with him though? I'll give you a second chance.
You give me a second chance,
and I don't want you to flex for the people. Please don't flex for the people. Veronique, would you get with the man from McDonald's? He's a good-looking guy. Listen, his name is good in the streets.
And I'm sorry, just real quick, you said he has a decent savings. He owns his home?
Yeah, he owns his own home.
And
3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Okay. I think nice now, yes. At the time that we had that conversation, I don't remember what my response is, but I'm going to believe you and say that it was no, right?
It's no.
I would say yes today. But only because I understand the value. I think I understand now the value of good stewardship more than before. My only issue is not like, would I be like, oh yeah, he works at me? Like what you know what I'm saying? But after a while, let me tell you, when you really like somebody, me and my friend Brittany at the intimacy firm, we talk about this all the time. Like, when you like somebody, like, you be wanting to be in their armpits. Like, everything they do, everything they say, smells, looks, and is just everything for you. So I feel like after a while, right? Like, if his character was where it needed to be, and God was
but would he get the time of day though? Could he get there?
I think so.
Can he get from the drive-through, my sister? Huh?
I think so. No, I really think that I could do it. My only issue, however, is that, yeah, you have a savings, but savings is not meant to be lived on. Can we have a life with children where we don't have to struggle, where we don't have to, wonder where our next meal is coming from? For me personally, while I have ambitions, while I have things that I want to do, I do want to live in an environment where I don't have to do those things. That if I need to stay home and take care of my kids for several years, that I can do that without fear and concern, without us eating syrup sandwiches and crumb allowances. Okay. But anyway, shout out to Kendrick Lamar. I want to not have my children go through that, but that's because of my own personal story. So if those things can be guaranteed, that my kids will be fine, that we will be fine, that I can do a vacation or a staycation a year. But like, if cool.
If a man makes 6 figures, is it guaranteed that those will be the outcomes for him? Is it guaranteed?
What do you mean?
Do people get laid off?
Yeah, but the potential is there. If McDonald's closes down, does he have other skills that are transferable to other places and locations? Is he easily hireable?
Right. All those things are discoverable outside of how much money he makes or where he works.
All I'm saying is, as long as we were able to have a conversation of like, hey, these are my goals.
You would have the conversation though.
Yeah.
Now, a man's means are generated by the foundation of the character of that man.
Facts.
And nothing else. So my thing is, I'm not saying run into a broke. I'm not saying if a person is a poor steward, if a person has run on hard times, I'm not saying run to follow them in that moment. I'm just saying, I think that whereas where it comes to women, it's almost like the narrative is she's great out the box. Like, no matter what she has or doesn't have, what she's accomplished, has not accomplished, have not learned. When have you ever heard any major platform say, sis, you're not ready. Go sit down somewhere and figure some things out, attain some things, grasp some things, grow in some areas. I mean, on a general, like,
widespread.
Widespread.
No. Okay, sure.
No, you guys are sugar and spice and everything nice, and I agree with that to some degree. But my point is, we're expected to look at the quality of the woman, the intrinsic things. But then when it's because you're looking for a mate, you're looking for a partner. But then when it comes to the other narrative, I just think it's interesting how the whole character part is left out of there. But here's what we say. We say character and broke. But now he got good character, but he's broke. But my thing is, if a person has good character, values, ethics, right? 9 times out of 10, they won't be broke. And if they are, they won't be broke long. And if they are, there's a reason. There's probably a reason why they are quote unquote said broke.
I think that's a good assumption. I just don't know if that really holds up.
Give me an example of a man that you've met that has great solid character and he's broke.
I can't say that, but I know men with trash character that are rich, so I don't think that.
But see that, but that's not a.
My point is that I don't think that solid character means that you can and will not be broke. Like I think that it's cool, but this idea that I think that's perpetuated even in society and things like that. That nice guys finish last. That good guys don't really get, everything that they want. So how do we now go from that idea to?
I think you should do a poll. Maybe do a poll with your people. How many women know a man who has a solid character? I'm not talking about he talked to you nice. I'm not talking about he doesn't get into arguments with you. I'm not talking about the things that benefit you. I'm talking about he has a solid character and ethics, and he's broke.
Now, I will say, how many of us know a man with solid character?
Okay, well there we go. So
and I'm not saying y'all done before y'all start going off. I know plenty of men in my circle that are good guys, but I think we first have to determine what is even good character. And but to your point, as I thought about it as you were talking, you're right. That idea that they might be broke, but they may not be broke long, or they're usually working towards something. There's some sort of initiative in them because of their character that drives some of their efforts. So I do agree with that.
And my thing is, if you get a solid foundation, like if you have a home that, it has a solid foundation, you can build anything on it. And I think that's the part that's missing. It's the narrative is skewed. So therefore, I think that is one of the biggest barriers that we have.
Yeah.
One of them.
Even though we touched on like 16 of them at the same time. But I will say, one thing that you almost got on, I almost feel like we need a part 2 because I feel like we barely touched the surface.
I'm with it.
So this is where I want to go. And I really feel like we're going to need a part 2 of this episode. And yeah, but I want to go to the meat of something really quick. One of the issues that I have, because you talked about pride. You've talked about us not wanting the man from McDonald's and things like that. But when you look at, again, what we have had to do, especially Black women, because I can only speak from our experience, Black women, especially growing up in the 90s and stuff, we had to kind of make our own way. We had to forge our own path. Many of us grew up in single parent households, right? Women-headed households, with matriarchal families, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. And so we grew up having this idea that low-key you can't or shouldn't depend on a man, right? Okay. And that's not our fault. A part of it is upbringing, but a part of it is circumstantial. When you look at what we've had to do in order to survive and what we've had to do, I own a home. Okay, I own a home. I work a job where if I don't make 6 figures, I make close to it. It's hard to nail down because I do contracts. I think I make close. I don't think I make 6 figures, but I make decent money, right?
Okay.
A man, I get a bag or two. But the reality is, I have heard men on occasion, I don't get this a lot, especially not anymore because I don't talk about my life a ton. But I've had men, or I've even heard them say it in general, like, well, y'all don't need us. Y'all don't need us. So go on about yourself. You got your house, you got your car, you got your degrees. Y'all so, into the stuff that you've achieved and all this kind of stuff. So why do y'all need us? And so now we're in like this double bind of like, well, I build a life so that way I don't have to depend on a man because I don't know when one is coming around, because we're one of the demographics that aren't getting married as much anymore, right? Black women, black men aren't getting married though. They're just not getting married to us. But we're one of those. So we had to do what we had to do, but we're open to love. But then when we go out and find love, oh, well, you got all this stuff and you don't need it. Or I'm seen as intimidating and things like that. I feel like in a lot of ways, black men or men in general punish black women for succeeding and for having to make do with what we had. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of the historical backdrop you gave was great. However, I don't think black men or men in general, specifically black men, I don't think we're upset at the ambition, at the accomplishments.
I said we're being punished. You don't got to be upset.
Well, in order to punish somebody, there has to be something that a person is opposed to.
There's an offense. Yeah, sure.
There has to be an offense. So my thing is, I don't think we're offended by that. I think that I'll just use myself. I think that I would be offended that it takes precedence over my role in your life. You say you're open to, it's almost like you said that they're open to love, but it's almost like, in what context? You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's like if everything is about your career, your ambition, all of these things, I got my own house, I got my thing is, naturally a man doesn't care about any of those things. We don't care. What we care about is being able to be the man in your life. That's what we do care about. And that's something that's completely legit.
But isn't a part of that, though, up to, you talked about character earlier. Isn't that down to your character? Because I know that there are things that I can do to maybe perpetuate insecurity or whatever. I'm not saying I do these things, but I'm saying I have the potential, right, to perpetuate insecurity. However, when a person comes through the door who sees, and maybe we had a conversation like, oh yeah, I have a master's degree. I do own my own home, blah, blah, blah. We're having this conversation, but I'm not like throwing it in your face.
Oh, that's
but
fine. You
walk in the door insecure and you look at what the situation is that I have set up and you're like, no, I don't think you're going to respect me. That's what I hear a lot. Like, I think that there is an implicit bias in men that if a woman has succeeded or have accomplished certain things, they're not going to be submissive. They're not going to listen. They're not going to, there is an insecurity that y'all come in the situation with.
Okay. But so let's say this. That's almost like, let's add consideration.
Okay.
That insecurity had roots somewhere. It's not because men are walking around like, oh, we ain't nothing, we don't make the same kind of money. Women making more money across the board, except for in the top 10%. Okay, we can get into that argument. But my point is this. Men don't care about that stuff. What happens, it becomes an issue when it is verbalized, when it is used as a weapon. I don't know any men who are technically or typically intimidated by any woman for any reason. If it happens, it's because at some point in time there was a line drawn in the sand about that house, about that money. And my thing is this: you can't say that it doesn't happen when we can go to YouTube, we can go to any social media platform, and we can see the words that are coming out of women's mouth. Not all, but the spokespersons, if you will, the mass majority of those getting the airtime. Right? This is not everyone. I understand that, not everyone. But it is to the point where it is a norm for a woman to say, like, for instance, I do a lot of media, right? And I have a lot of conversations, and it's so, and I'm on dating apps. Okay. Can we talk? Can we talk? So I'm on the dating apps and I'm swiping or whatever the case is. I can't tell you how many times a woman is like, I own my own business. I got my own car. I make 6 figures a year. I all of these things that are external. I don't care.
You don't care.
I don't care.
It's fine that you don't care, but do you feel a way about that? Now, again, I understand for women who throw it Like, and weaponize it, as you talked about, right? They're like, you can't talk to me like that. I got 3 cars. I got da-da-da-da. Like, I get, that's just poor character, right? We're talking about character. That's poor character. Like, who cares? That means nothing. But I feel like when y'all see that, you make an assumption about what that means.
Psychologically, we come in a room, you meet me for the first time, and I tell you the zip code that my home is in, and I tell you the 2 cars that I drive, right? It's not a sin for me to do that. But you have to ask yourself, why was that even a part of the conversation? Why was it even necessary? What was the motive behind me saying that? I must feel some kind of way, or want you to feel some kind of way. I must feel, want you to know something. Communication is intentional. Right. So my thing is the fact that it is always a part of a communication and it is very common. You have to say, well, what are we supposed to take from this as men? What do you want us to understand? That you don't need us and you just want us? You don't need us? Okay, maybe you don't. But is that a conversation? Because does a man come to the table and say, hey, listen, I don't need you for anything. I just want you. And if he did, how many of them are going to be successful in building that relationship? So I think we have to really start, confronting some of these things, because we want to say, oh, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't define me. It doesn't da-da-da-da-da.
But it does.
But it does. Because how often do you run around being like, I'm black? Just so you know, I'm black. Oh, by the way, hey, Fran, Chan, did I tell you I'm black? I'm black. And then say, oh, but it doesn't mean anything. I'm just sharing it for no reason. You're not.
Right.
And men know that, because my thing is it seems common to you, but when you do it to a man, he knows it. And it's not even that he's intimidated by it, but it's almost like saying, I'm getting ready to get into a scenario where I could sacrifice my entire life for you, but the only thing you're willing to sacrifice your life for is yourself, because that's what you talk about.
Yeah, I feel that. Rebuttal,
go for it.
I remember, I remember when right before I really started going through my divorce, and there were some things that were happening that I remember that I had to say these words, just to cover all sides of the situation. I had to tell somebody like, hey, yeah, I can't really go down with this ship right now because I don't have anything. I just graduated grad school and I'm still looking for a job. So if you don't mind, can we just hold off on all of these like things that could potentially happen, so that way I can get my footing? Women no longer want to be in a position where they are at the mercy of a man to act right, because it can be dangerous for us. And I think that should we be wielding around our achievements because and like, hey, look at me, look what I did, look what I can do? No, but I think what we're saying is, hey, I have options. So don't treat me like I don't. Don't treat me like I have to be here. Don't treat me like, you know what I'm saying? Don't walk all over me and treat me like a doormat because you are able to go out and make money and live and I can't, because that's not the situation. I need you to come into the room. I need you to come into the relationship with a level of mutual respect, to be honest. So that knowing, and again, it goes down to why are we choosing men that we have to have these types of conversations with, right? So I'm not saying this as an actual depiction of how I feel, y'all, because I have sense, but I understand where that comes from. It's like, don't come to me thinking that you're coming in as, I was about to say captain. Anyway,
save them.
Don't come into the situation like you're about to be my knight in shining armor. I need you to come in as a willing participant and a partner in this relationship, so that way we can build something greater. Does that make sense?
I get it. I feel like that's an attempt at a balance of how to look at that. But I guess the thing that I would challenge you or anybody else to do is whatever communication you're giving, flip it from your audience to you and see if you receive it the same way. If you can't receive it the same way, probably isn't.
Because if a man come to me talking about, I got options, I'm going to be like, then go get them.
Exactly. And so that's my point.
Touche. That was good. I got to give it to you. That was pretty good.
Marketing 101. Join my masterclass.
Hello, period. $97 today. No, I get it. And I think the goal for me in this part of the conversation, there's so much more that we haven't even covered. So y'all stay tuned for part 2. But I think that part of what I want people to get from this conversation is validation on both sides, but also like a dose of reality, right?
I think that the narratives create a world that we don't have to be accountable. And I think that that's the thing I have the biggest problem with. It's like the reason why, you know, and I'm not saying that he's not the shining example of what a person with a strong message should be. I'm not saying Kevin Samuels is the model. But what I will say is this. Kevin Samuels he's breaking ground because he's giving a voice to narratives that have been suppressed from so many men. That's why his audience has responded the way that it has, is because he is, I guess, not afraid of getting canceled, and he's saying a lot of the things that have been supported by so many men. And I think that's something that we have to realize, that men, we do have a voice, and it's not limited to like the patriarchal models that are so many times referenced, or, you know, the standing in the top 1% in business and corporate America. It's bigger than that. My thing is, men are not trying to relate to women on an industry level. We were never socialized to do that. We're trying to relate to women that we're wanting to connect with.
Right.
You know, and I think that that's the biggest thing.
I'm so glad you touched on Kevin Samuels. We are going to talk about him in the next episode. And not only will we talk about him in the next episode, but we're going to give some practical insight on how to navigate dating just a little bit better. So that way we don't have to feel like ain't no more good women.
Let's do it.
All right. So before we end this episode, we always talk about what we are grabbing. Can you lead us in that? What are we grabbing from this episode?
I think we should grab humility. Just being able to know that your side is not the only side, your perspective is not the only perspective, and, you know, we're not the only one that thinks we have clear lenses. Yeah.
That's good. That's all we grabbing?
That's what I'm grabbing.
I'm with that. I think I'm gonna grab something too.
Lion King. Grab the Lion King. Netflix.
I'm gonna grab having a reciprocal view of the ideals and beliefs that many of us hold, right? So I love that you were like, well, flip that. That's what I'm grabbing. I'm grabbing seeing things from the other perspective and how my actions, thoughts, and beliefs may impact the men that I come in contact with.
Say la.
I'm with that. So, normally we do a questions and confessions, but this is a really long episode, so we're going to save it for part 2. But thank you all for watching. Join Patreon. There are some things, if you're listening to this, not on Patreon, there are some things that you missed. We cut out some things because it was really a long episode, but it was good. But, if you want to get the full episode, go to Patreon. You can join for as low as $3 or as much as $100 a month. And we would appreciate that, so you can support it. But we want to have this conversation in depth. So you just find Authentically Wed Patreon. Also, follow our guest at
Norsworthy 613 on IG.
All right. And that'll be posted in the show notes. And follow us at Authentically Wed on Instagram, or join the Authentically Wed Facebook group. That is free. We be popping and lit. We probably have some things coming up, but I'll put that in the show notes too, as not to take up any more time. But my sign off for today is, if Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, ain't no one gonna eat them but him, so who gonna check you, boo? Until next time, grab your stuff. Let's go.